Dear colleagues, I will try to manage this microphone. First of all, thanks to all of you who came today here to be together on this keynote speech. I would like to start with an announcement. I received this task from Dagmar, and the question is that first of all, opposite the desk of registration, you can find 2 flap charts, and we would like you to write there your thoughts, your ideas, and answer to the question, what is the essence of the 2.5 days for you here during this last 2.5 days we spent together. What is your message what is the message from you to the world and to us? So if you can write your thoughts to the paper and flap chart, we will be very grateful. And now I have to press yeah. Dear colleagues, dear participants of the Aurora International Conference on Role of Higher Education in Peacebuilding in Innsbruck, organized by Aurora Universities and partners as a part of Task Team Karazin Peace Education Hub. My name is Gabriela Tsapets, and I'm from Palatsky University, Czech Republic, but I'm originally from Ukraine. And it's an incredible honor for me to introduce you our keynote speaker today. On her Facebook profile, she says, "Pessimism is a luxury we cannot afford. When strength runs out, character begins. And when I run out of my strength, I go to her page and listen to her speeches." Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Oleksandra Matviichuk, a human rights lawyer, head of the Center of Civil Liberties, Nobel Peace Prize recipient in 2022. As a human rights lawyer and head of Center of Civil Liberties, Oleksandra Matviichuk works on issues in Ukraine and OSCE region, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. She has experience in creating horizontal structures for massive involvement of people in human rights activities against attack on rights and freedoms, as well as a multi-year practice of documenting violations during armed conflict. She is an author of a number of reports to various UN bodies, the Council of Europe, the European Union, the OSCE, and the International Criminal Court. After the beginning of Russian full-scale invasion in February 2022, Oleksandra Matviichuk, together with other partners, created the Tribunal for Putin initiative in order to document international crimes under the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in all regions of Ukraine, which became the targets of attack of the Russian Federation. In 2016, she received the Democracy Defender Award for exclusive contribution to promoting democracy and human rights from OSCE. In 2017, she became the first woman to participate in the Ukrainian Emerging Leaders Program of Stanford University. In 2022, Oleksandra was awarded with the Right Livelihood Award, the Sakharov Prize from the European Parliament, and recognized as one of the 21st influential women in the world by Financial Times. In 2022, she received the Nobel Prize for the work of her organization for Center for Civil Liberties. Today, Aleksandra's keynote speech is titled "The Role of Higher Education in Peacebuilding." Dearest Oleksandra, it's my honor to give the floor to you.
Thank you very much for providing me a floor. It's a huge honor for me to address this distinguished audience. I'm a human rights lawyer, and for 11 years, I have been documenting war crimes in this war which Russia has launched against Ukraine. While this war turns people into the numbers, we are returning people their names. This is what we are literally doing, because people are not numbers. Life of each person matters. Only for the 3 years of the full-scale war, we have jointly documented more than 81,000 episodes of war crimes. Russian troops are deliberately shelling residential buildings, schools, churches, universities, museums, and hospitals. They're taking evacuation corridors. They're torturing people in filtration camps. They are forcibly taking Ukrainian children to Russia. They ban the Ukrainian language and culture. They abducting, robbing, raping, and killing civilians in the occupied territories. And entire UN architecture of peace and security can't stop this. I know from my own experience that when you can't rely on the legal instruments, you can still rely on people. We are used to thinking in categories of states and interstate organizations, but ordinary people have much more impact than they can even imagine. I want you to look at one photo. This is photo, a vivid testimony to this. It was taken in my native city, Kiev. After the Russian missile attacks on the civil infrastructure, we in Kiev lost heating, electricity, water, and internet connection. On this photo, you see a teacher. You see how a teacher conducting an online lesson on a cold winter street, sitting under a supermarket that has installed a generator. Due to this, she can catch a little bit of internet there. She squatted down and placed her laptop on a metal pole. This teacher feels her own responsibility to ensure that Ukrainian children have right to education. What this Ukrainian teacher is doing is a real act of resistance. But the fact that thousands and thousands of teachers in Ukraine and other countries of the world have to not just teach young people, but every day make extraordinary things and commit acts of resistance shows that we need to rethink something very essential. Higher education in the modern world faced many challenges, but I would like to focus on just one that seems to me to be the most relevant. Education is not just about transferring knowledge and skills, it's also about ingraining values that underlie how we evaluate the world around us. And the way we see the world determines our decisions and accordingly our behavior. Therefore, I want to focus on the role of higher education in cultivating humanistic values, those values that make us human. We must never forget that the gas chamber to kill people in Auschwitz were built by experienced engineers. First, we are losing freedom in our world. Half of population in the world last year went to election. But don't be an illusion. More than 80% of people around the world live in non-free or partially free societies. This means that people who have the real right to vote for whom they want to vote, to say what they think, to love whatever their heart tells them to love, and to choose freely to whom God they want to pray, are the minority. And the problem is not only that the space of freedom in authoritarian countries has narrowed to the size of the prison cell. The problem is that even in developed democracies, people are starting to call into question the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. There are reasons for this. The coming generations replace those ones that survived the Second World War. They have inherited democracy from their grandparents. They began to take human rights and freedom for granted. They have become consumers of democracy. They understand freedom as a possibility to make a choice between different cheeses in supermarket, and therefore they are ready to exchange freedom for economic benefits, promises of security, or personal comfort. In addition to it, we have a rapid development of new technologies. People spend more and more time in digital reality, which is overloaded with fakes and disinformation. It leads to a situation that people are losing their ability to make a distinguish between truth and lie. They become very vulnerable to the deliberate external manipulations. And that is why even people in small communities has no more shared reality. Without shared reality, people have no common actions. Without common actions, people can lose their freedom and democracy. Freedom is not just some articles in UN conventions and declarations. Without freedom, there is no love. This is visible in the example of North Korean soldiers supporting Russian aggression. They have been taught to love their dictator more than their children and families. They are ready to carry out any misanthropic order and to sacrifice everything just for the will of Kim Jong-un. The defector from North Korea, after many years of rehabilitation, openly wrote in his memories how he gave up his own mother for torture and death. When a person doesn't have the space for freedom, he ceases to feel with his heart and acts at the level of the basic instincts. Freedom and peace are inextricably linked. States that grossly violate human rights provide threats not only to their own citizens, but to security and peace in general. Second, unpunished evil grows. When you know history, it's difficult to remain an idealist. The 20th century brought two devastating world wars, terrible colonial wars, millions of deaths, and dehumanization of humankind, which reached its most concrete form in the Holocaust and Nazi concentration camps. The horrific lessons of the past demanded decisive actions. Responsibility for what had been perpetrated was codified in the slogan, "Never again." Governments created the United Nations system and signed international agreements. The idea that every person is free and equal in dignity and rights came to characterize the new post-war humanism. Meanwhile, the totalitarian Soviet Gulag was never condemned or punished. And that's why Russia celebrates the end of the Second World War with a slogan, "We can repeat." And that's why, for decades, Russia was persecuting journalists, killing activists, and dispersing peaceful demonstrations inside their own country. But also, Russia committed terrible crimes in Chechnya, Moldova, Georgia, Mali, Libya, Syria, other countries of the world. But for a long time, the developed democracies turned a blind eye to this. They continued to shake Putin's hand, building gas pipeline, and carry on business as usual. The world scarcely blinked even to the annexation of Crimea by military force, which was unprecedented in post-war Europe. And it became clear that people in different countries understand the slogan "Never again" quite differently. Some people believe that it means a moral responsibility to react very sharply and uncompromisingly to any manifestation of mass violence. But unfortunately, for many others, "never again" means that they never want to be involved in the struggle for freedom in their life. And for this, they will make any compromises to the aggressor, give up their freedom, and sacrifice entire nations. But if you think like that, then war will definitely come, which is exactly what happened. Thus, evil keeps coming back. The destruction of Grozny, a city of 500,000 people in Chechnya, the Russian bombardment of Aleppo, the firebombing of Mariupol, and the bodies of people killed on the streets of Bucha. Third, we have entered a period of turbulence. I don't know how historians in future will call this historical period. The world order, based on UN Charter and international law, is collapsing before our eyes. The international peace and security system established after the Second World War provided unjustified indulgences for certain countries. It's coped more or less with global challenges before, but now it's stalling and reproducing ritualistic movements. The work of Security Council is paralyzed. And now it's very easy to predict that fires like wars will occur more and more frequently in different parts of the globe because the international wiring is faulty and sparks are everywhere. In addition to it, we are dealing with formation of entire authoritarian bloc. I live in Kiev, and my native city is constantly being shelled not just by Russian rockets, but also by Iranian drones. China helps Russia to avoid sanctions and import technologies critical to warfare. North Korea sent to Russia more than 1 million artillery shells and deployed their troops to Russia. All these regimes have something in common. All these regimes, which captured power in their own countries, have the same idea what a human being is. Authoritarian regimes consider people as object of control and deny them in rights and freedoms. Democracies, even not being ideal, consider people, their rights and freedoms to be the highest value. And there is no way to negotiate it, because only existence of free world always provides a threat for dictatorship with the loss of power. Armies are talking now because international law is not working. The international law is not working because something collapsed in the ethical attitudes of people. Freedom and human rights requires a certain mindset, a specific perception of the world that determines our thinking and behavior. So it's not enough to pass the right laws and create formal institutions because values of society will always prevail. This means that we need a new humanistic movement that would work with meaning, educate people, build grassroots support, and engage people in the protection of rights and freedoms. This movement should unite intellectuals and activists from different countries because ideas of freedom has no limitation in national borders. This will enable us to create a demand for solutions and jointly overcome global challenges like wars, inequality, attacks on privacy, rising authoritarianism, climate change, etc. The role of higher education in it is crucial. We have to start to learn what does it mean to be human. And what is our starting point? Public intellectuals say that we live in post-truth era. In my opinion, we live in post-knowledge era. People with access to Google who can find the formula for aspirin in 2 seconds have begun to forget that this doesn't make them chemists. They have started to think that they can easily figure everything out with constant access to a variety of data on the internet. They began to believe that there was no need to make any efforts to gain knowledge. They listened to beauty bloggers in TikTok on how to live and how to behave, not the doctors or scientists, because doctors and scientists doesn't have millions of followers. They confuse knowledge with information. They negate knowledge as such. Our world became hyper-complex, very dynamic and interconnected. But people around the world are demanding quick and simple solutions for the global challenges. Perhaps in more peaceful time we could afford it. You can treat a runny nose with a squats, at least it will not harm the body. However, if we are already dealing with cancer, the price of such simple solutions and actual therapy delays will be high. And our times are not peaceful. It's become the huge problem that people start to massively reject their own responsibility. Countries may have a large population, but still a small number of citizens, and it's typical for authoritarian countries, first of all. Living in fear produces a certain way of thinking, like, I'm an ordinary person, Nothing depends on me, and anyway, there are not us who take any decisions. This is learned helplessness syndrome in action, when a person voluntarily renounces his or her subjectivity. But we observe the same trend even in developed democracies. When a lot of people doesn't want to step out from the zone of their comfort and to take decisive actions in order to respond to global challenges, they live in temptation that these challenges will vanish. But the truth is that global challenges just become more and more destructive. Someone has to tell all these people that person become citizens not upon receiving a passport, but when the area of responsibility begins to encompass broader categories than just him or herself. And let me finish with my personal story. Just in these days, 3 years ago, I was in Kiev when Russian troops tried to circle my city. It was very scary times. It was time when not just Putin, but all international experts were confident that Ukraine will fall just in 3 or 4 days because we have no potential to resist to such enormous opposing power. When I and my family celebrated each morning like a victory because we stand one more night. I would never wish anyone to go through our experience because the war is horrible. Nevertheless, these dramatic times provide us an opportunity to express the best in us, to be courageous, to fight for freedom, to take burden of responsibility, to make a difficult but right choices, and to help each other. And then, 3 years ago, suddenly it became obvious that people fighting for their freedom and human dignity are stronger than even the second army in the world. It would be logical to end with some call to action, but there will be no one. I'd rather ask 3 questions. First, how we people in 21st century will defend human beings, their rights, their freedom, and their human dignity. Can we rely on the law, or does just brutal force matter? Second, what exactly we should teach our children at a time when the world order is collapsing before our eyes, and as a result of it, will witness the increase of the number of nuclear states, the emergence of robotic armies and new weapons of mass destruction, the using artificial intelligence as the methods of war. And third, how can we remain human? I leave these questions open. Let's look for complex answers to them together. But I'm here to say that despite everything, even our personal story of Ukraine, it's a life-affirming story because the dramatic times raise hope. Because when freedom is denied, it becomes powerfully break out through the concrete every individuals. And I'm here to say that our future is unclear but not pre-written. And we still have a chance to fight for future which we want for us and for our children. Because hope, it's not a confidence that everything will be fine, but this is a deep understanding that all our efforts have a huge meaning. Thank you.